What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Monday, February 9th, 2026, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 15:28 Eastern Time here in the United States, and I have some major breaking news to share with you from Iran and also from the Caribbean. So, over the weekend, an armored battalion from Iraq's 9th Division entered the Green Zone in Baghdad and set up defensive positions around U.S. installations and the U.S. Embassy. So, if you're not aware, the Green Zone in Baghdad is the capital of Iraq. That's where they have all the embassies and foreign offices in the Green Zone. So the Iraqi military has deployed an armored battalion, probably tanks or some kind of armored infantry fighting vehicles, to protect U.S. installations in the Green Zone. That is a major red flag that war with Iran is coming soon. And the Trump administration has told Iran that it expects the Iranian delegation led by Foreign Minister Araghchi to arrive at their meeting this week with quote-unquote meaningful substance and concessions after Tehran ruled out a total halt to its uranium enrichment during Friday's talks in Oman. Two people familiar with the matter told the Jerusalem Post. So if you're not aware, on Friday, Iran basically told the U.S., we're willing to negotiate on our nuclear program, but that doesn't mean that we're going to stop enriching uranium. They basically doubled down and said, we have the right to enrich uranium. We're not going to negotiate that right away. And then they didn't even want to talk about the ballistic missiles, the proxy forces, and the protesters that they killed. So the Trump administration is definitely pissed off with Iran, and this week could be the last chance for Iran. And Israeli Channel 15 is reporting that the U.S. asked the Iranians to develop a plan outlining the concessions they would be willing to make as part of the negotiations this week. And the Jerusalem Post is reporting that Israeli defense officials recently told U.S. counterparts that Iran's ballistic missile program represents an existential threat to Israel and that Jerusalem is prepared to act unilaterally if necessary. Quote, we told the Americans we will strike alone if Iran crosses the red line we set on ballistic missiles, end quote, the source said, adding that Israel is not yet at that threshold, but it continuously tracks developments inside Iran. Okay, so Israel told the U.S. they're willing to act alone if necessary. And according to Israeli Channel 14, the U.S. finalized the deployment of U.S. Patriot and THAAD missile defense batteries across approximately 20 bases throughout the Middle East. Wow, so the deployment of all the air defenses has been completed across 20 bases throughout the Middle East. Wow. And what you're looking at here on your screen is a notice to airmen that was issued in central Iran for missile and rocket fire. Pretty interesting. So it looks like the Iranians are testing some missiles, or they're getting ready to launch missiles at Israel and the U.S., potentially Saudi Arabia. This is exactly what Iran did last year and the year before. When they were about to launch missiles at Israel, they issued this NOTAM for rocket firing. Okay, so it's like deja vu all over again. They issued one of these NOTAMs like a day or two before they launched all those like 500 missiles at Israel during the Biden administration. And a C-17 Globemaster and a C-5 Super Galaxy transport aircraft belonging to the U.S. Air Force were reportedly seen landing at an unidentified site in Turkmenistan. So The C-17 and the C-5, those are U.S. military cargo planes, with the C-5 being the largest in the U.S. military, and apparently they landed somewhere in Turkmenistan. Very interesting. And this update was sponsored by NYPrepper Supply. Guys, NYPrepper Supply is doing a $100 discount on their 3-month emergency food supply. And to get the discount, you got to go to preparewithnyprepper.com. The link is in the description down below. The normal price for their 3-month kit is $800, and they're selling it for $700. That's $700 for 3 months of emergency food, up to 2,000 calories per day for 3 months, and it has a shelf life of 25 years, all packed within rugged, watertight buckets that don't take up a lot of space. You don't have to worry about rotating anything. You don't have to monitor expiration dates. You don't need a massive place to keep all your food. You can fit all this food in a tiny closet in a studio apartment. So use the link preparewithnyprepper.com to get $100 off the NYPrepper Supply 3-month emergency food supply, and the link is in the description below this video. And the Iranian General Mousavi said that Iran is ready for a protracted war with the United States. And what you're looking at here is a large banner that was unveiled in Tehran's Palestine Square, showing a map highlighting potential targets in Tel Aviv, and it says, "You start, we finish it." Wow. Okay, so very, very serious, guys. And Iran's foreign minister said over the weekend in an interview with Al Jazeera that if the U.S. attacks, that Iran will strike U.S. bases in the Middle East. He said, quote, "It would not be possible to attack American soil, but we will target their bases in the region," end quote. Arghachi said, "Any dialogue requires refraining from threats and pressure. Tehran only discusses its nuclear issue. We do not discuss any other issue with the U.S., he said. Okay, so Iran is showing defiance to the United States. And he also said, "We are determined to uphold our right to the nuclear program, even if that leads to the outbreak of war." Okay, so you heard it there. He clearly said, we're not going to negotiate away our right to make nuclear, enrich uranium, okay, to make nuclear weapons, essentially. So this is going to lead to war. Neither side wants to compromise the U.S. and Iran, so it's going to lead to war. It's going to happen, guys. I'm telling you right now. It's inevitable. The opportunity is too large for Israel and the U.S. to not take advantage of it. Okay, the Iranian regime is weaker than it's ever been before. Hamas has been dismantled. Hezbollah has been dismantled. A lot of the proxy groups have been dismantled. So that it's just too tempting for Israel and the U.S. to not do something now and topple the regime. Also, remember, Iran is very rich with oil, okay, just like Venezuela. Venezuela has the most oil of any country in the world, but Iran is not far behind Venezuela. So think about it economically. If you're Trump, how smart would it be to get rid of Khomeini and then open up the oil drilling in Iran to secure oil for the U.S. and drop our oil prices down and build up our strategic reserves, okay? And the Iranian Foreign Minister Arghachi said, quote, we neither trust them nor rule out the possibility of deception and trickery. In fact, we fully anticipate it. In all the meetings I have said this might be a deception. Please let no one be deceived. Everyone should go about their work as if we are not negotiating at all, whether in the armed forces, the government, or anything else. The country must be managed without reliance on these negotiations. So he's basically saying that, this could all be a trick by the U.S. and Israel, and they may end up just striking Iran anyway. So he's saying that Iran should prepare for that. And at the meeting in Oman with Iran's regime, sources in Israel, citing American sources, say the Americans presented their red lines, which included halting uranium enrichment, removing enriched uranium, limiting ballistic missiles in both quantity and range, and ending funding for proxy forces. Iranian representatives rejected all of the demands and continued to insist on maintaining their right to enrich uranium. The talks focused largely on conditions for negotiations, and here too no real breakthrough was achieved. The U.S. agreed to another meeting, but made it clear it expects a concrete Iranian proposal rather than delays. Okay, so guys, Iran is basically doubling down. They're not willing to meet in the middle at all. They're not willing to have any kind of compromise. So the U.S. is going to strike Iran, I'm telling you right now. The Iranian consulate in Basra warned any American or Israeli attack on Iran will lead to a full-scale war. And Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, will depart for Washington tomorrow. He will meet with Trump Wednesday morning local time and depart the U.S. on Thursday, landing back in Israel Friday morning, sources say. The Israeli Air Force commander will be accompanying Netanyahu on his visit to the U.S. So Netanyahu flying to the U.S. to meet with Trump personally and bringing his Air Force commander. And then get this, a White House official said it was Netanyahu who asked to visit the White House a week earlier than originally planned and meet the president this coming Wednesday. So Netanyahu wanted to speed up this meeting and have it this week instead of next week, okay? So that is big news, okay? And Israeli Channel 12 is reporting that Netanyahu held a security cabinet meeting yesterday before his visit to the U.S. So they obviously discussed everything related to Iran. And here you can see all these U.S. military transport planes flying to the Middle East in the last 24 hours. But interestingly, you can see some of them actually flew over the Caspian Sea and to Turkmenistan, which is very unusual. And then also a large amount of C-17s flew from Ramstein in Germany to Azerbaijan. About a dozen C-17s flew to Azerbaijan. That is not normal, guys. And what this tells me is that the U.S. may be using Azerbaijan as a launch pad for strikes against Tehran, because if you look at the map, Tehran is very close to Azerbaijan. If the U.S. were to try to strike Tehran from the ocean, from the Arabian Sea, you know, you're talking 1,500 miles that U.S. fighter jets would have to fly over to reach the capital. Or if they fly from Jordan, they're going to have to go all the way over Iraq, and then they're going to have to fly over much of Iran, because Tehran is all the way at the northern part of Iran, right on the Caspian Sea. So that presents a huge challenge for U.S. forces, especially if there's air defenses present in Iran. And then that requires a lot more aerial refueling, because it's a long distance for fighter jets to cross. They're not going to be able to carry as much weapons because they're going to need to carry more fuel instead of weaponry. So the sorties are going to take longer. They're going to have to refuel more often. They're going to have less weapons. So wouldn't it make more sense if they launch strikes from Azerbaijan, which is, I don't know, maybe 200-300 miles from Tehran? If you look at the map, it's really close. Okay, so they could, you know, fly, you know, dozens and dozens of sorties from Azerbaijan very, very easily. And Khan News in Israel is reporting that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is seeking to share intelligence with U.S. President Trump regarding Iran's ballistic missile program and ongoing reconstruction efforts. And Israeli media is reporting that Iran is now producing hundreds of ballistic missiles every month. Most of them use liquid fuel, while some newer ones are solid fuel precision missiles. Even if the quality is not very high, the large number could overwhelm both U.S. and Israeli air defense systems. Okay, so that's a key thing. Iran has so many of these missiles, even if they're trash and they're not accurate, they can do damage, and they're going to be hard to shoot down that many of them. So the U.S. is going to have to go in and neutralize these missile locations before they launch, and the problem is they're all underground in mountains. So it's going to be pretty tricky, but of course I have faith in our U.S. military. We have the best military on earth, and I do believe that we can pull it off if enough time is given to prepare. And the Israeli National Security Minister Ben-Gvir said Israel will not accept a nuclear Iran with ballistic missile capabilities, and Netanyahu is capable of addressing Trump and convincing him. And we're hearing reports coming out of Iran that Russia is evacuating their workers from the Bushehr nuclear power plant in Iran, and that's happening right now. So obviously that means that an attack is imminent. And the U.S. Department of Transportation's Maritime Administration issued a maritime advisory on February 9th, that's today, addressing risks in the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, and Gulf of Oman. It specifically advised U.S.-flagged commercial vessels to stay as far as possible from Iran's territorial waters, transit eastbound in the Strait of Hormuz close to Oman's territorial sea. The advisory highlights the ongoing risk of Iranian forces hailing, querying, boarding, detaining, or seizing commercial vessels using small boats, helicopters, and attempts to force ships into Iranian waters. Wow. And a video reposted earlier today on TikTok by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described potential attacks by the U.S. Navy against Iran involving the USS Abraham Lincoln and associated carrier strike group currently deployed to the Arabian Sea. Very interesting. And channels affiliated with Iran's IRGC posted a video earlier today using artificial intelligence, which appears to show an attack using drones, gunboats, missiles, and submarines on the USS Abraham Lincoln and carrier strike group. So very interesting. And the Iranian deputy foreign minister met with the Russian and Chinese ambassadors in Tehran on Saturday, just a day after attending talks in Oman with the U.S. So Iran is filling in the Russians and the Chinese on what's going on with these talks. And there was a security alert at the Ben Gurion airport in Tel Aviv. A Wizz Air flight departing from Ben Gurion in Israel was intercepted and escorted back to the airport by Israeli fighter jets due to an onboard security issue. Wow. And the Israeli Security Cabinet approved sweeping measures expanding Israeli control in the West Bank, including removing land sale restrictions on Jews, reopening state land acquisition, and expanding enforcement in areas A and B, and streamlining settlement planning. So this is huge news, okay? So now Israelis can purchase land in the West Bank, and the Israeli state can also acquire land in the West Bank. So that is huge news. And the U.S. military intercepted a Panamanian-flagged crude oil tanker by the name of MT Aguila II in the Indian Ocean overnight without incident after tracking the vessel, which was operating in defiance of President Trump's established quarantine of sanctioned vessels linked to Venezuela from the Caribbean Sea. So we had this oil tanker from Venezuela that was captured in the Indian Ocean, and the Indian Coast Guard said that they seized 3 Iranian ghost tankers that were carrying out ship-to-ship transfer of smuggled Iranian oil. The tankers and their crews are being escorted to Mumbai. Interesting. And we have some major breaking news coming in from Ukraine. So everybody's been focusing on Iran, but in the meantime, major things are happening in Ukraine. So Russia is massing forces and preparing a new large-scale offensive against Ukraine this summer in the south and east of the country, according to the Institute for the Study of War. Key axes, including Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, and Orikhiv Zaporizhia. Russian forces are already shaping the battlefield despite massive losses and the need to throw reserves straight into ongoing fights. At the same time, the Kremlin is forming a strategic reserve of new recruits starting in July 2025. The bet is obvious: force, not negotiations or peace, and alongside this, a second, no less cynical track. Zelensky says Ukrainian intelligence learned that the Kremlin is trying to sway Trump with a fantastical $12 trillion deal, more than 4 times Russia's annual GDP. The offer was allegedly pushed by Kirill Dmitriev during a visit to Washington. The talks may involve large-scale U.S.-Russian economic cooperation, including energy and resource extraction. Wow. Okay, so the Russians want to make a massive deal with the U.S., and they're massing forces for another offensive this summer. And NOTAM, a notice to airmen, was issued for the Jose Marti International Airport in Havana, Cuba, and flights are now being canceled, and the government of Cuba warned international airlines operating on the island that as of Monday, the country will run out of aviation fuel, jet fuel, due to the U.S. oil siege or embargo, whatever you want to call it. But basically, the U.S. is preventing any oil from getting into Cuba. So now international airlines are being warned that they don't have any jet fuel in the island of Cuba. That is huge news, and Russia will definitely not like that, what the U.S. is doing with Cuba. And what you're looking at here is some pretty amazing video footage coming out of Ukraine showing a Ukrainian F-16 shooting down a Russian drone. Check this out.
Летить, сука, гандон.
Wow, pretty impressive. So you see the drone just gets shot down, and then you'll see the Ukrainian F-16 just flying by. Pretty badass. There's the Ukrainian F-16 right there. So, you know, a lot of people talk trash about Ukraine, but the Ukrainian military is really tough. They have really good pilots, really tough and brave fighters. And opposition channels in Venezuela are reporting that Juan Pablo Guanipa, the leader of the Justice First Party, who was released by authorities after being held as a political prisoner since May of 2025, was kidnapped at gunpoint in the Los Chorros neighborhood. So this is an opposition guy who was arrested by Maduro, then shortly released after Maduro was captured by the U.S., and now he was apparently kidnapped. Okay, and the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Second Lady Usha Vance arrived in the Armenian capital of Yerevan this morning aboard Air Force Two in the first visit ever by a sitting president or vice president of the U.S. to Armenia. So that is huge news, and Russia is definitely not going to like the warming ties between Armenia and the U.S. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I might be back later on tonight with a live update somewhere between 10 p.m. and midnight Eastern time. And until then, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere. And this update was sponsored by EMP Shield. Guys, EMP Shield has created a special discount just for you, the listeners of the NYPrepper channel. If you go to empshield.com and use the promo code NYPrepper, you can get 15% off your entire order. And why do you need an EMP Shield? Well, this is a special device to protect your vehicle, your RV, your solar generators, your radios from an electromagnetic pulse, which could be caused by a solar flare or potentially a rogue country like North Korea detonating an electromagnetic pulse weapon over the United States that's mounted onto a satellite. So protect your vehicles, protect your RV, protect your radios, protect your generators with an EMP shield. Use my promo code NYPrepper to get 15% off. Installation is super simple. This is a veteran-owned business, 100% American-made, and the EMP shields have been tested by the military, okay? And free shipping is included to the entire continental United States. And the link and the promo code are in the description below this video.